and culture news with our culture editor Catherine Nicholson. Hello Catherine.
Hi Claire.
We're going to start off with some sad news, the death of Shirley Temple.
Yeah, that's right. As we've heard, this was confirmed by her family in the last few hours that she died late on Monday at the age of 85. Now, Shirley Temple, former child star, she really was Hollywood's tiniest and also mightiest star in the late 1930s. She had her first film role when she was just 3 years old. At the age of 6, she won a special juvenile Oscar, which hasn't actually been awarded since 1960. It's a rare one anyway, and she still has that record as the youngest person ever to win an Oscar. Now, she was known for her very cute blonde curly hair. She was known for her tap dancing and her singing, and we've got a little clip for you of singing When I Grow Up from the film Curly Top. Here she is.
So I've got to think what I will be when I'm no longer small. When I grow up in a year or 2 or 3, I'll be happy as can be, like a birdie in the tree. If you see that you need some company, you can call me up and I'll come down when I grow up.
And Catherine, what about her later life?
Well, she actually did end her career quite early on compared to most people. She had already saved 20th Century Fox, the film studio, from bankruptcy with that film that song was from, Curly Top. But her career had peaked and she decided to end things when she was just 21, 22. She did remain an American sweetheart, though, and she moved into a much more serious career as a diplomat, working for Republican administrations, notably as ambassador to Ghana and also ambassador to Czechoslovakia.
All right, let's move on to a musical anniversary now. 50 years ago today, the Beatles played their first concert in the US, and you found some of the people who were involved in different ways. Tell us more.
Yeah, that's right. February 11th, 1964, a big date for Beatles fans. As you say, they played their first American concert, and it was in Washington, DC. Now, they never really looked back. We found a few interesting people, one of the flight attendants from the plane that they flew over to the States on, some fans, and it seems that Beatlemania really did start before that plane even touched down. Take a listen.
I tell the story wherever I go, and somebody says, "Oh, you're on the Beatles flight. How exciting." Everybody wants to know what it was like. The guys were nice, very pleasant and mannerly, but we didn't get a chance to talk to them much because they were up running around taking pictures of the crew and everyone else, and it was like, would you please sit down because we have a cart service to do.
I loved the Beatles, every one of them, but I'm a favorite of Paul, as you can see. And I was watching the TV that night on the 9th and taking pictures of the TV as a 13-year-old, just wrapped.
It was such a unified screen. You know, there were all these different people, but it all melted into one. It was primarily adolescent female human beings.
So please love me do. Whoa, love me do.
So there we go, all of the photos that we just showed you there were from that particular concert on February 11th, 1964, and they were taken by the last speaker in that little sequence, Mike Mitchell. Now, as you might have noticed, the concert hall where they played hasn't quite lasted as long as the Beatles. It's fallen into ruin, and it's now a big car park. So sad news for that, but the Beatles obviously still going strong.
Good for them. Now, speaking of the Beatles' legacy, your guest on the culture show Encore today is a Russian rock star who was inspired by them.
Yes, that's right. This is Boris Grebenshchikov. Now, he's known as the founding father of Russian rock, and also by some people as Russia's Bob Dylan, although the music is somewhat different. Now, he's in Paris right now for a show on Thursday at the Théâtre de la Ville. He actually emerged in the 1970s, so obviously still Soviet times, as an underground musician in his hometown of St. Petersburg. He used to play secret gigs in people's apartments, secret venues. It was all very word of mouth, because he said essentially either you did that or you became an official mouthpiece of the state. So yes, like you say, he told us one of the bands that inspired him was the Beatles. Of course, the Soviet authorities did restrict access to anything Western at the time, but Boris told me earlier that that just made young fans like himself even more determined to listen in.
It was rather hard to hear because they were trying to exterminate the whole sound, so it was like white noise, and from once in a while it was like several notes. Great way to hear music.
Earlier we kept saying...
Oh. That was
I'm
Boris.
sorry. Now, was Boris himself considered counter-culture in Soviet times?
Well, as you heard there, he used to listen into Voice of America, which the authorities were scrambling and all that sort of thing. But he said that he just had to be quite careful, really, not to properly get on the wrong side of them. So he was never banned by the authorities, anything like that. But of course, nowadays, Russia is still in the news every single day with the Winter Olympics, which we all talk about a lot. And in recent days, some high-profile artists have been speaking out against the Russian state. Now, these include Madonna, who spoke a few days ago at a big concert in New York to support Pussy Riot. I asked Boris if he thought that these kinds of statements made by these kinds of people, non-Russian artists, might be likely to change anything within Russia. Take a listen to what he said.
I don't believe it has any chance of being heard. Mm-hmm. But it may be useful for the people who are saying this. I've seen a lot of people speaking against this and that, and I never saw any results.
There we go.
Right,
yeah, you can hear
much,
that full
Catherine.
interview at 5 o'clock, 5:15 on our show Encore today.
All right, thanks very much, Catherine. You're watching live from Paris. It's time now for our daily sports roundup.
Martin Fourcade has won